Hello. What's up? Oh, my voice is a little worse for wear than I thought. Hang on. I am, very congested today. I don't know why. So hopefully that does not, impact the auditory experience at all. But, we're gonna be playing more Path of Exile today, because I had a couple of ideas of other things to do, and then it became 8 o'clock, and all of the other ideas would have taken time and effort, so here we are with something that took no time to set up and no effort to set up. And I'm gonna play some Path of Exile. I played a bit off stream last night, or this morning, as it were. But yeah, just gonna keep throwing explosive vials full of poison at people and hope that it works. So I guess we can go ahead and switch on over as soon as Spotify stops being slow. Ah, too mellow. Nice. Alright. Ba-ba. There we go. 20% considering starting it up sometime, giving it another go. If you need some help or some advice or what have you, I'm more than happy to assist. Like, there are a couple of builds that end up being a lot easier to get going than others, a lot easier to kinda not just play, but also builds that are easier to figure out, I guess. Kind of depends on what kind of playstyle you prefer in a game like this. But there are definitely builds that require much less complicated systems and mechanics and stuff like that. Like some of the higher level stuff with this build can be pretty complex, but the gearing is actually relatively straightforward on this build that I'm playing here, mostly because there aren't a lot of common attributes and modifiers and all that will do a ton for the poison damage and such. So as far as just like getting through the game and getting into the end game stuff, it's mostly just make sure your defenses don't suck. Have some life, have some elemental resistances, so on. Looking for something on the simpler end of things. Well, alright, since we're already on the topic, what kind of character do you prefer in action RPGs like this? Do you like melee stuff? Do you like spellcasting? Do you like summoning? You know, there's all kinds of different gameplay styles. Totems are pretty cool because you just like drop your totems, or like traps are similar. You drop your totem or drop your trap and then just hang out at a distance. Because a good way to not be killed by the enemy is to be far away from the enemy. What are you? Nothing. A typical, like, really, like, beginner kind of build is Ground Slam Juggernaut. So Ground Slam is technically a melee ability, but what it does is you use it and it sends like this cone outwards of damage, basically. So you get a big-ass two-handed hammer or axe or whatever works with the skill. And you get a ton of life, you get a ton of defenses, mostly armor, like damage mitigation rather than... or like damage reduction, damage resistance, rather than a lot of worrying about like dodge chances and stuff like that. You just be a big beefy dude and you jump around and hit the ground so hard that everything in front of you dies. If you like Set It and Forget It, totems and traps are both pretty good right now. Trap builds are more complicated in general, and because traps are kind of a meta build at the moment, buying like high-level gear is going to be more expensive than totems. But for totems, totems are generally just pretty strong. I'm not sure what the current like best totem build is, but if you can just like... Usually where I look for builds is on the Path of Exile official forums, because they have forums dedicated to builds for separate classes and stuff like that. So usually what I'll do is I'll just skim through each of the classes, see what kind of builds are available. When you're looking for builds, if you're okay, let's clarify. If you're going to use a build, because you don't have to, and I'll get to that. When you're looking for builds, the main thing that you want to keep an eye out for, like the main wording that you want to look for, is League Starter. So, League Starter builds are builds that are, like, playable or, like, explicitly good even without already having gear or equipment or anything to start with. Because some builds are like, oh, in order for the build to be fun at all, you need, like, strong gear starting out. But generally, builds that are marked as League Starters are built around the idea that you are going to be starting from nothing. And also, League Starter builds tend to be more beginner-friendly. But good builds of the sort will also have a lot of stuff like, here are the skills that you want to be using within this level range. Here is, like, here's the kind of gear that you're going to want to keep an eye out for as you're leveling. Because typically, a lot of builds are just focused on the end game more than anything else. But yeah, there are totem builds, there are summoner builds. One of the most common summoner builds, and it's super beginner-friendly, is Summon Raging Spirits. And what Summon Raging Spirits is, as a build... Oops, I had my map up, sorry. What Summon Raging Spirits is, as a build, is you click a button, and you summon an angry, flying, flaming skull. And then you summon a lot of those, and they will automatically just wander around until they find dudes to fight, and then they will fight those dudes to death, and they will move on. And the kind of gear that you have to keep an eye out for is relatively straightforward. You want fire damage, you want things that increase the level of your fire or summoned gems. And then, like, that's... Other than that, you just want your basic array of defenses and all that. So, with a Summon Raging Spirits build, a lot of the time it's like, you walk into an area, you summon a bunch of you summon a ton of angry skulls, and you walk around, and the skulls will kill most stuff, and sometimes you'll summon more skulls, because the other skulls just wandered off and got lost, or, you know, you need more skulls right in front of you right now. How easy is it to respec in this game? That's a complicated thing to answer. Okay, let's do this. First, I'll talk about coming up with, like, builds on your own. Second, we'll talk about respecing. So, coming up with builds on your own. When you open up the passive tree, of course it's massive and intimidating, but at the top, it's got a search bar. So, totem. I want to make a totem build. So I'm gonna search for totem-related stuff. Alright, over here. Oh, that's reduced number of totems. Don't worry about that. Alright, here we go. Ancestral Bond. You can't deal damage with skills yourself. +1 to maximum number of summoned totems. That seems great. If your build is entirely based around dealing damage with totems, perfect, here you go. And then, you also got this over here highlighted. Increased totem damage, increased totem life, increased totem duration. All seems great. Totem attack and cast speed, totem life and elemental resistances so your totems don't get killed by everything. Wonderful. Seems good. Down here, increased totem damage, increased totem placement speed. Seems great. Alright, so it seems like there are some really good sources of totem stuff up here. What kind of totems are you going to use? Well, let's just say I want to do something super basic. Fire totems. I want to search fire. What do we got? 50% of physical cold and lightning damage converted to fire damage. Deal no fire damage. Maybe. What about this? Increased fire damage over time. Regenerate a bunch of life. Gain physical damage as extra fire damage. Seems good, but what if I just want, like, huge increases to my basic-ass fire damage? What about over here? Damage penetrates 5% of fire resistance. That is extremely good, because, you know, resistance decreases the damage that's being taken by a percentage. You just take you take part of that percentage off, and you're dealing way more damage. Over here, increased fire damage, increased area of effect. Fire damage over time, increased fire resistance. That can also be pretty handy, because it's like, alright, I already want more fire damage and stuff, but on top of that, I'm also getting bonuses to my own defenses, so I don't have to worry as much about getting, like, a ton of fire resistance on my gear. Seems great. Now, a lot of the stuff that I've been finding, like fire damage, totem stuff, it's all close to this spot over here, which is the Templar starting point. Maybe I want to start as a Templar. Oh, but do a little bit more searching. and you will discover that each of the classes has different... I don't remember the name of the system. I just call it, like, the archetypes. Each class has 3 of these archetypes. Ascendancies, maybe? Each of them has 3 of these, and these are also really great places to look if you're looking for specific benefits to specific kind of builds. Like, this is the Pathfinder Ascendancy, and, well, as someone that is using a lot of flasks, like, I care a lot about how good my flasks are, and I'm trying to deal a lot of poison damage. Oh hey, whenever you kill a poisoned enemy during any flask effect, nearby enemies are poisoned. Gain flask charges every 3 seconds. More chaos damage with attack skills. Chaos skills have increased area of effect. Poison is a chaos effect. I'm trying to do poison stuff. Perfect. So, you can look at those to determine what starting class you want, but you also look at, like, where stuff is on the tree. And it's like, okay, I know that I want some of these nodes up here, I want some of these nodes over here, but maybe this class has the ascendancy that you want. So, you start planning, you start trying to get a vague route for how you're going to get from point A to point B. Alright, well, I could start here, and that gives me melee damage, but I don't really want melee damage, but it does start me closer to the stuff that I want over here. Well, what if you were to start down here? It takes a little longer to get to the stuff that you're looking for, but on your way, you're getting armor, you're getting increased maximum life, you're getting regenerate life per second, you're getting more life, you're getting increased life, you're getting all the life. So you're not getting to the point on the tree that you want to get to quite as quickly, but if you're smart about what nodes and pathways you take to get there, then you're probably going to end up with a lot of benefits that you were looking for anyway. So it's like, I start here, I want to get here, but then on the way I plan it so, like, I'm getting armor, I'm getting life, I'm getting armor, I'm getting life, I'm getting armor. I stop right here, maybe I'll take a little pit stop and grab this cluster right here, because this gives me a bunch of armor, it gives me a bunch of life, it gives me a bunch of life regeneration, because you always have to keep in mind that survivability is king. You gotta be able to kill the enemies, of course, but you gotta make sure that you don't die. So, alright, cool. Now you got your pathway. You got your path that you want to get there. So I'm gonna start over here, and then I'm gonna zip through here, and I'm gonna stop in here, and I'm gonna grab some of this stuff, and then I'm gonna zip zop zoogity bop. I'm gonna, like, try and swoosh through here so I can get some of this increased maximum life, and then bam, ancestral bond. And then I start looking at, like, alright, are there any other cool clusters of passive effects along that pathway that I just made that are good for me? Well, I'm doing fire totems, so if I just pop up here, bam, fire damage, fire damage, fire damage. Love it. So, that's like general... big sneeze. So that's general, like, how you approach the passive tree kind of stuff. But what about gear? Hey, what do I equip? Well, early on, there are 3 things that you really have to take into big consideration, right? Number 1 is your sockets. So you can see, I use a lot of green gems. Gear that gives evasion is more likely to give green gem slots. Gear that gives energy shield is more likely to give blue gem slots. Gear that gives armor is more likely to give red gem slots. What kind of what color gems are you going to be using a lot of? Well, alright, first of all, what kind of skill are you using? Totems are red gems. And a lot of totem things that make totems better are red gems. So you're going to want something that has a lot of red slots. Thus, you're going to want a lot of armor, which already works out because all of the stuff that really likes totems is over in the area of the passive tree where you're getting a lot of benefits from armor, increased armor, and so on and so forth. Perfect. It all works out. But then, naturally, you're going to want gear that has armor. Naturally, you're going to want gear that has red slots. But then, you also have to worry about the links between the slots. Right? So, alright, these shoes. These shoes have 2 gem slots, but they're not linked together. These have 2 gem slots that are linked together. But how do I choose between these shoes and these shoes? Well, how good are your support gems gonna be? Is it worth using a slightly worse piece of gear that has better gem slots? Maybe. A lot of that just comes to kind of just feeling it out. Just like, this gear does have all of the stats that I want, but this other piece of gear is worse, but it lets me use all of my support gems, which in turn makes my abilities way better. And since my abilities are better, I'm killing enemies faster, and so my defenses being worse isn't as much of a problem. And that's a lot of that is personal preference. Just, are you willing to trade off some of your survivability in exchange for extra damage? Maybe. But hey, how do I know if a gear is? How do I know if a piece of gear is better or worse for what I'm trying to do? On a very fundamental level. Unless you are explicitly going for, like, an energy shield kind of build, which I can get to. But for the most part, most builds will want a lot of life. So you want pieces of gear that have life on them. A lot of builds, or not every single build, every character, regardless of what kind of build they're going to be doing, everyone wants resistances. Everyone wants elemental resistances. It increases your defenses. It increases your survivability so much. So everybody wants, if you find a piece of gear that has a ton of extra elemental resistances, it's probably pretty good. And then you start getting into smaller details. Hey, I need extra intelligence in order to equip this gem, or in order to equip this other piece of gear. So I'm going to look for pieces of gear that have intelligence. And then you start getting into the nitty-gritty of, like, specifics, like what your character specifically is looking to do, what they're looking for, so on and so forth. And that stuff is a lot of stuff that you learn as you go along. Like, this ring adds 1 to 2 fire damage to attacks. Is that good for me? Well, is my primary ability an attack? Poisonous Concoction is an attack. It's got the attack tag right there. So, I am adding fire damage to that attack. Is that good for me? Well, first of all, how much damage is it adding to the attack? Do I have any effects that increase my fire damage? it's only adding a little bit, but what if I'm using an attack that hits multiple times? What if I'm using an attack that hits very quickly? Because if that's the case, then a little bit of fire damage can really add up. For me, this fire damage to attacks doesn't actually do anything, because I am using the Void Manipulation support. Supported skills deal more chaos damage, but no elemental damage. And so, you could have a build where you are using Poisonous Concoction, but not using Void Manipulation, so having added elemental damage is actually good. Like, a lot of what I'm getting into, a lot of what I'm saying, like, I'm saying a lot of words right now, but a lot of this stuff just comes as you play, because when you're first starting out, does it have the gem slots that I need? Does it have life? Does it have elemental resistances? And that's all you need to worry about right out the gate. And really, that's most of what you need all the way until the end game, really. Like, it's nice to have gear that will make you deal more damage. It's nice to have gear that has some kind of special effects, like, hey, I've got this shield. Increased area of effect for skills used by totems. Damage dealt by totems is leached to you as life. You and your totems regenerate some life per second for each summoned totem. If I were a totem build, I find this, and I'm immediately thinking, hell yeah, perfect. This is everything that my build could ever possibly want. And maybe it is. But maybe at some point you'll find a better shield that cares a lot about totems. Or maybe you'll find a staff that cares a lot about totems, and then you're using that staff, and so since the staff is two-handed, you can't also use the shield. Which is better? I don't know. Maybe you just equip one or the other and you check the DPS listed on your little tooltip down there. That's like a super basic way to do it, but, you know, maybe that's a good way to figure it out. So I'm not going to bullshit you and say that these games are not mechanically complex, but as far as, like, stuff you need to know to beat the game, the very basics are, on your gear, you want to make sure that you can use your gems, you want to make sure that you have some life, you want to make sure that you have some elemental resistances. Now, if you're doing more of a spellcasty kind of build, then you're probably going to end up more focused on energy shield than life. If that's the case, then you want to make sure that your gear has better energy shield. You want to make sure that you're getting like pieces of gear that give you a bunch of energy shield, and then if that's just the kind of build that you're doing, then you're probably also going to be looking for nodes on the passive tree that give you percentage increased maximum energy shield, flat amount of increased energy shield. That's what you're looking for. As you examine all the mechanics, they start linking together in ways that just make sense for the most part. And that's made so much easier by gems nowadays having very clearly marked tags, like Poisonous Concoction. It's an attack, it's an area of effect ability, it deals chaos damage, and it's a projectile. So I know, hey, stuff that increases my chaos damage, probably good. Stuff that makes my attacks better, probably good. Stuff that makes projectiles better, probably good. And on top of that, they also made the user interface for support gems even better. So I've got this support gem, this lesser multiple projectile support. I just got it sitting in my inventory. because maybe I picked it up. Maybe I got it as a quest reward. Is this gem good for me? Or does this gem even work with my ability? You mouse over it, and it gives you this little window, and it shows you which gems you currently have equipped that the lesser multiple projectile support can support. Lesser multiple projectiles can support Herald of Agony, because Herald of Agony, the little minion that it summons, shoots projectiles, so it has the projectile tag, so lesser multiple projectiles can support that skill. After years and years of RPGs where powers give you no details about what they do or what things they scale with, this detailed tag and explaining system looks really nice. Yeah! It has a ton of mechanical complexity, a ton of depth, but it doesn't try and hide a lot of stuff from you. And there's also a lot of things where if you hold the inspect key, which I don't remember the default, I have it set to space, you mouse over a piece of gear, you get even more details about specific words and phrases and mechanics listed. So here we go. 0.5% of damage dealt by your totems is leached to you as life. And then you inspect it, you get the explanation. Leached life is recovered over time. Multiple leeches can occur simultaneously up to a maximum rate. So now it's so much more clear about how that, like, how the effect of leeching life works. Great! Can you make a stupid meme build that is maximum survivability and deal damage through reflected damage? Yes. Those kinds of builds are generally not very good. However, if you want a more interesting build that's still not very good, there is a support gem called Cast with Damage Taken. And with that gem, any supported skills, whenever you take a certain amount of damage, you will automatically use that skill. So you can make it so that all of your attacks, all of your damage dealing stuff only happens when you take damage. You can do that. It's probably not going to be very good, but you could totally do that. But then you start getting into the complexities. Then you start getting into the real shit. Where you use specific unique items that trigger off of certain conditions. And then you set up the conditions such that they are just right. So then you establish a, like, maybe this other item will cause you to take damage whenever you do something. And then you're using a cast with damage taken setup to make it so that the thing that makes you take damage happens when you take damage. And then you create a loop where you are just constantly doing that thing. And then you have to, like, do some other stuff, like, oh, I have to make sure that I am actually taking enough damage to trigger the cast with damage taken stuff, but also am restoring enough life such that I don't die from my own abilities being triggered off of themselves. It's complex. It's dumb. It's probably, like, really difficult to actually... It's difficult to set up in the first place, and then, you know, extra difficult on top of that to get it to actually do anything. But you can. I'll try and find my favorite YouTube fellow for builds like that. Just because of the wild amount of mechanical depth in this game, you can do some You can do some stuff. One of that person's builds, they made a build whose, like, the entire purpose of the build was to cause so many visual effects all the time on the screen that the game is basically unwatchable and unplayable. And then they would go join a public group, and then they would use that skill, and they would cause people's computers to crash. They also made a build that caused basically anyone they were grouped up with to deal no damage. Like the anti-support character, where they are actively detrimental to the party. Are you no longer exiled? No, I'm still exiled. But next up is the act where we go back to town. We go back to the place that we got exiled from, and shit is bad. Because shit is basically always bad everywhere in this universe. The basic plot of this game is each of the different characters got exiled to this area that most of the early game takes place in. Most of the game takes place in a realm called Rayclast. And basically you get sent there if you suck and are bad. That's usually the reason. So all of the different player characters got sent there for different reasons. Like, the Templar got sent to Rayclast because of heresy. The Duelist got sent there because he murdered a noble or something like that. And so the goal is to adventure through Rayclast, solving problems, helping people out, with the ultimate goal of, well, depending on what character, some characters are out for revenge, trying to kill specific NPCs, but there's also the goal of getting back to the good continent that I can't remember the name of. But then once you do that, then shit goes poorly, so you have to go back to Rayclast in order to do some stuff. You have to go back to Rayclast so you can do stuff to get strong, and then once you are strong, then you go back and resolve the bad shit that went down when you went to the good continent. Alright, back to a way earlier point that I said that I was gonna get around to. Can you respec in this game? Kinda. So, there is a as you complete quests throughout the main story, some quest rewards are respec points. So you can refund one node for 1 point. You get something like 20 refund points over the course of the story, which isn't a ton, considering that, like, by the time you get to endgame stuff, you will generally have, like, around 100 passive points. But as far as, like, early stuff goes, then it's not it's not quite as bad. But the bigger thing about respecking in Path of Exile is that there's a lot of different angles to the concept of respecking in this game. Because you're not putting points into skills, right? Your skills are these gems. And so at any time, if I decide I don't want to be a Poisonous Concoction build anymore, I could switch that gem out for a different skill, and I could start using that skill. Now, because I had built around that skill specifically, whatever other skill that I end up switching to instead, probably not going to be as good. Can I fix that? Yes. But the way that you go about fixing something like that is like, well, how many passive points do you have invested into stuff that benefits that skill specifically? If it's basically all of them, maybe it'd be better to just start a new character. But, you know, with games like this, you're not starting completely from zero if you do start with a new character, because you've got access to any stuff that you put into storage and all that. So, it's not quite as bad starting over. But a lot of respecking is just like, are you changing your character completely, or are you just like moving a couple of points around to use a similar but slightly different skill? Like with this build, because I am a build that is focused on using poison and projectile stuff, then I could, there are a couple of skills that I could switch to and use instead. There's like Toxic Rain, which is a skill where you do an AoE, like you shoot some arrows up into the sky and then a big AoE of poison arrows start falling from the sky in that area. So, like, that's a poison skill that cares about AoE. So, maybe I could switch over to that without too much trouble, but if I wanted to switch to, like, something with fire damage, it would probably be better for me to just make a different character. But Path of Exile is also a game that starting a new character once you have a general idea of what you're doing becomes so much less of a like, oh god, gotta start all over kind of thing. Because you can really speed through this game if you know what you're doing. Like, I have 1,600, almost 1,700 hours in this game. I have gotten characters to... I think I have gotten 1 or 2 characters to level 90. The guy who made this build that I'm currently using, he made this... he designed this build starting completely fresh. Like, the build started... This was the first character that he made in a new league, so he didn't have access to any of his resources from previous characters. It was just starting completely from scratch. He got to level 90 in 1 day. That's not a reasonable goal to aim for when you're, you know, first starting out, but you know, you're typically not going to be spending 30 hours to get a character to the end game, as long as you have some general idea of what you're doing. And some general idea of what you're doing could be following someone else's advice, it could be following a build, it could be, you know, maybe you just find some good gear early on and that really helps you make a lot of progress. There's all kinds of reasons why it wouldn't actually take that long. But it's probably not going to take that long. Although, take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a grain of salt. I have played this game a lot. It also depends on what your goals are for any given character. Do you want to beat the story, or do you want to, like, start getting into the real deep end game, like, optimized build kind of stuff? Do you even care if you beat the story at all? Do you just want to, like, play the game for a bit and get as far as you're getting? It's all up to you. Sell these 3 flasks to get a better flask. And then sell these 3 flasks to get an extra better flask. And I'm going to put this extra better flask next to my other extra better flask. So that way I can have 3 of those for if I need to make another super duper extra better flask. Evasion rating, maximum life, increased movement speed. Oh, I think I need the intelligence. Oh wait, maybe not. Oh, I do. Oh, and it's for Flame Dash, too. Oh, what a shame. Gonna put these boots into the guild stash. Oh yeah, and that's another thing. If you're cool, if I know you're cool, I could also let you into the guild. Because we have a guild. And we have paid actual money for the guild to have a lot of storage space that anyone in the guild can access. Which is pretty cool. Don't think you'd be able to get into this game because Warframe already scratches that itch. Yep, that's totally fair. I think there are some aspects of Path of Exile that, like, scratch different itches than Warframe. They're kind of different in the way that their grind works. Because Warframe is a lot of legacy stuff, a lot of being able to carry over the benefits from one thing to another. Also, just you're playing as one character. You can switch to different frames and different weapons and stuff, but the way that all of those interact and work together is far less limited than something like Path of Exile, where, especially if you're just doing a League starter, you're starting from nothing. You were starting an entirely new character and just seeing what happens from there. Damn. Increased armor, maximum life. Yeah. Oh, I'm not going to use this, but maybe someone else will. Increased attack speed, increased dexterity, increased movement speed, increased mana recovery from flasks. Yeah, like that. Alright, if I take this off, is the game gonna get mad at me? No. I'll put all these gems into my new shirt. Put my old shirt into the guild stash. Once people actually start getting higher level, I'm gonna have to go through and clean this up, but for now. Can you move without having to click all over the place? You can click and hold. So like, I clicked once, and then I'm moving around. I don't know if you can use the controller controls on PC. Maybe you can. But I know that the console versions of this game have controller support. Moving with click is bad. Yeah. That's fair. Again, I don't know if you can do controller movement input. Yeah, I don't know. That's why Pokemon Unite is the only MOBA you were able to get into. Yeah, that makes sense. This kind of game can be pretty rough on the wrist. Also, hopefully my captioner doesn't get too upset, but I do need to turn my fan on because it's almost 80 degrees in my room for no reason. What temperature is it outside? So, what's the weather? This isn't the Karui that I know, says my character. I'm a fool opening up my phone. So then I notice that I have a ping on Discord. It's probably about something horny, too. Unfortunately, many of my pings on Discord are as such. Sometimes people ping me for, like, cool art that isn't horny. Sometimes. It's only like 40... It's 40-something degrees outside, and it is 80 in my room. I have no idea how my computer is generating 40 degrees Fahrenheit worth of temperature. But I would prefer if it didn't. Did you see Naganuma's tweet about only being interested in fat tits? I also saw Naganuma talk about how furry porn is bad. And it's just like, damn. Never meet your idols and all that. Your temperature situation is bewildering. Yeah, do I have something... Do I have a way that I can check the temperature of my computer? I have Specky, right? Specky can look at computer temperatures. Implying cool art that isn't horny on Discord. Sometimes it happens. There was like a Lucario in that cool Halloween costume, and Lucario didn't even have its dick out. It can happen. Motherboard, 42 degrees Celsius. Video card, 57 degrees Celsius. Yeah, that's pretty hot. Well. Doghouse has a furnace that points only to my room. I think the heat, like... It's been getting cold downstairs, so the heat has been on. But I have the vent in my room closed so that I am not a recipient of the heat. But heat does rise, and so I guess all of the heat is just coming up to my room. Clearly what I need to do is I need to get another computer. So I get a second computer, and then that second computer is for playing the games on, and then this computer becomes the computer for just streaming the games, like doing the actual broadcasting. Obviously that's the way to do it. And this would become the computer for broadcasting, because if I'm going to get a new computer, then I could probably get a pre-built, because pre-builts are the only ways that you can get video cards these days. Thanks, Bitcoin. Clearly you're going to need to invest in something to make your poison explosions bigger. You're not covering enough of these big rooms. That's true. Actually, let's switch this to this. Because currently, I think my my Plague Bearer is actually giving me it's putting out enough damage that I can actually just walk past enemies while it's active and kill them that way, which is pretty neat. The Ark of the Covenant cooling system. Yeah, I guess my computer just runs hot. Oh, we can see all kinds of fun computer statistics up there in the corner now. How exciting. These view notes are actually new, I think. Ugh! I'm so sneezy. I'm currently just having fun watching the little readouts up in the corner while I'm doing my thing. It's pretty interesting. As a nerd, here I am in fucking hell, walking around throwing explosives at demons. And I'm looking at a cool little graph up in the corner with some numbers and meters. What's the sort of gameplay that just pops out in the weirdest places? Oh, fuck. Oh, if you didn't ask me, I could have told you. No. I know the word, it's in my brain somewhere, but I can't call it to mind right now. Ah, fuck. My instructors would be so disappointed in me. Use the power of graphics and numbers to remember. Damn it. I was too caught up in trying to think of... Oh, hey. Trying to remember the name. Trying to remember a term, and I just couldn't. Ooh, new shield. It's not evolutionary, it's not exploratory, it's not... Oh, God. What term were you trying to remember? Starts with an I? Like, my brain is trying to tell me that it starts with an E. But I could also be the case. In what context is the term used? Gameplay that comes from unexpected places, like gameplay that is a result of the game mechanics. Emergent! Yes, thank you! Yes! Emergent gameplay! Thank you, Cult. I'm so fucking embarrassed that I forgot that term. I love that term. Well, this shield does have a funny number for its evasion rating, but the amount of life that I get out of it is bad. You're a producer, you facilitate communication? Hell yeah. Give your diploma to Cult. No! No! I worked really hard for it. It was on the tip of my tongue that entire time. If Cult weren't here, I would have gone mad. I don't know if I'm a better designer. As a whole, I feel like... I talked about this last time, or... I talked about this in a recent stream. I don't find myself to be a particularly creative person. I just know a lot of things. And even then, I wouldn't say that I have a vast wealth of knowledge. But I've just picked up a lot of things from a lot of games. Like if I were to go over all of the stuff that I saw and experienced in Mega Man games, I could probably have valuable input in the design of a Mega Man styled game. Like expressing what kinds of mechanics what kinds of mechanics worked well together, and what kinds of mechanics did not work well together. I could probably talk about that all day. But you tell me to come up with, like, hey, what weapon would you want to put into a Mega Man game? It's like, shit, I don't know. Metal Man's saw was pretty cool. Hat gets hired at Capcom, gets put in the team to make the next ZX game. I feel like, as someone that has played a lot of Metroidvanias and loves Metroidvanias, I feel like I could put in some work there. But I would be relying a whole fuck of a lot for anything creative, for just like, alright, what kind of levels are we gonna have? Fucking, I don't know. Don't put ice physics in the ice level, unless you have a real good reason. What roles do we want the weapon to fill? What other weapons are there? Yeah. Like, you ask me raw, out of context, what kind of weapon do you think would be good in a Mega Man game? What kinds of levels are we working with? What are the other weapons? Like, what, in the context of playing through a level, is the weapon supposed to do? What is it supposed to accomplish? What does it do that the regular Mega Buster does not? Sorry, I had to blow my nose. I'm dying of congestion over here. I don't know why. I want a good direct attack weapon, one that can hit unexpected angles, one that does interesting things with movement, one that affects the levels in interesting ways. Right, yeah. Puts ice physics in the fire level with oil platforms over instant kill pits. I think that was a thing in... Which was the one that had Turbo Man? Was that... I can't remember where Turbo Man was from. But I think Turbo Man's stage did have oil slicks, and also did have instant death fire pits. Level theming and interaction. Yeah, like... a lot of the most fun uses of weapons in Mega Man games. I think Mega Man 8 actually had some of the most fun uses of weapons as tools within levels. Like, sure, you can, like, go the long way around to get to this specific location or power-up or something, but if you come into this level with this specific weapon, then you can use that weapon to get up there way easier. But yeah, thematics also can really heavily affect what makes a weapon... Like, what makes a player want to use a weapon? Because of course you have the obvious answer of, it's strong, it kills enemies quickly. Alright, so from there you can start thinking about, alright, we have this weapon that's really good at killing tough enemies quickly. Does it also kill, like, weak enemies quickly? What is the weakness of the weapon? Well, maybe it's really hard to hit flying enemies with it. Alright, so if that's the case, then do you get it in a level with a lot of flying enemies? If you don't get that weapon from the level that has all of the flying enemies, then the likelihood that someone is going to use that weapon in the level full of flying enemies is relatively low. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because then what if we use that, like, that gap in design? Now, the player is super unlikely to use this weapon in this level. How can we change the level such that the player is now more likely to use that weapon in this level? Well, because we have established that that weapon is really good at killing, like, really beefy, slow-moving enemies. Where in this level can we fit a beefy, slow-moving enemy? Don't even have to have multiple of it. You could just set up a specific situation where the player is challenged. Like, the player has a lot of trouble dealing with this really slow, beefy enemy in the context of the level, and under the assumption that, you know, in very fundamental contexts, you always have to design that kind of scenario with the player only having the absolute basics, only the fundamentals, and still have it be completable. So what kind of challenge do you add to a scenario like that such that the player can both complete the challenge using only the absolute most basics, which is probably just the Mega Buster, but still challenging enough such that they are really encouraged to use this weapon if they have access to it. And, like, I brought up Metal Man Sawblade, but Metal Man Sawblade is not a good... Metal Man Sawblade is not good design as a whole, because it becomes the dominant option. It becomes the dominant strategy. There we go, that's the term I was looking for. Where if you have Metal Man Saw, you are probably going to use that more than any other weapon in the game, just because it is so good. You can shoot it in any direction. It's really strong. It has a shitload of ammo. You're, like, it's... Assuming that weapon energy drops at a reasonable rate, then, like, you're never gonna use the Buster if you have access to Metal Man Saws. And that's not good. You want the player to be encouraged to use a variety of tools. I think that's one of the things that me personally as a player, I really enjoyed Mega Man X4, because I liked using Zero's saber. I really enjoyed the Z-Saber. I thought it was really fun to use. I thought, like, the risk-reward was really great, because you have to get up right close to the enemies, but you do way more damage. You can kill things way faster, and it's generally, like... In addition to just being personal preference of, I don't like holding down the button for a charge shot, there's also just, like... I like the aesthetics of using a sword. I think it's cool. And the way that X4 implemented different abilities and boss weapons and that kind of stuff in the context of a game where, you know, one of the main characters, they are primarily going to be using a sword. They are going to be in melee range. What do you do for boss weapons? Well, instead of just giving Zero different weapons, which also probably would have been fine, instead of that, and instead of just giving Zero access to the same weapons that X has access to, you give them sword techniques. So now you are still using the sword. You are still, like, for all of the players who really enjoy using Zero from an aesthetic standpoint of, I just really like using the sword, I think it's cool. Now, not only are you still gaining full benefits from defeating bosses in the form of these techniques that have the same kind of effect as X's equivalent of the boss weapons, you are making him feel that much more unique to X, and you are... I feel like the saber techniques just felt more natural to use in a wider variety of circumstances because I didn't have to consciously switch weapons. I didn't have to think, oh, okay, I need to, like, stop for a moment, I need to think of, like, what weapon I'm gonna switch to, and then go and switch to it. No, it's like, oh, this thing is flammable. I'm just gonna hit the buttons that make me do the flaming uppercut with the sword, like the flame slash. It came across, like, to me as a player, it felt that much more natural. Does that mean that every Mega Man game should be a Zero game, and that you should never be switching weapons? You should always just, like, be learning new techniques to do with your basic weapon? No. Because when I played through that game as X, I also really, really enjoyed the weapons that X had. X4 is just so fucking good, but also, one of the biggest benefits to the design of having Mega Man or X as the player character. One thing that makes that kind of game feel so much better is being able to quickly switch weapons. You still want to have the option of, like, alright, pause, let me think about this, let me take a moment, go through, manually select the weapon that I want to switch to. But also just being able to, like... There were a bunch of bosses at various points in the X games where, you know, wily fights or stuff like that, like late game bosses, after the point where it's assumed that you already have all of the weapons. There would be situations where it's like, okay, I have this weapon, if I hit the left weapon swap button twice, then I will have the next weapon that I want to have equipped. And that works out really well. Because it's not super complicated of a process. It's just like, okay, I'm gonna hit this button twice, and then I'm already going to have the thing. And you can learn that pretty naturally just from, like, using the weapon swaps regularly and getting a feel for where all of the weapons fit on the bar. Point that needs to be brought up is weapon cost. Yes. There were definitely some weapons across the Mega Man franchise that sucked to use, not because the weapon itself was bad, but because you get, like, 3 shots with it, and then you're out of fucking ammo. It's like, oh, cool, well... Now, if I'm ever going to use this skill, I'm going to be super cautious, I'm going to have to, like, be extremely cognizant of whether or not it's worth it, and then, like, just that worry of, like, oh fuck, am I gonna fuck it up? Am I gonna whiff with this weapon? Maybe I just use my buster instead. And that's one of the things that made Metal Man's weapon, like, such an absurd option, because, you know, it had all 3 aspects that you want out of a weapon that you will use more than any other weapon. It's strong against most enemies. 1. It's very easy to use. You can shoot it in any direction. 2. And then 3. It has a shitload of ammo. No other weapon came anywhere close to the quality and versatility. Like, it was one of the best weapons that a Mega Man game has ever had. And that's not a good thing. It certainly makes it memorable, but you put the other weapons in the game, you want people to use them. If you didn't want people to use those weapons, you wouldn't put them in the game. But then you have these situations on the other end of the spectrum where it's like, not necessarily weapons that nobody will ever want to use, but weapons that are only good in very specific situations. Weapons that are basically only used for specific stage interactions. You know, if... Alright, you have a fire weapon. The fire weapon can burn foliage or trees and reveal hidden stuff. If you only have burnable weapon, like if you only have stuff that can be burned in one level, that is such a waste. Put some little bushes in other levels, and you don't have to put anything important behind the bush, but just make it so that you can burn it. Make it so that you can, you know, maybe it drops a health refill or something, like a little health pellet. It doesn't have to be anything huge, but the fact that this weapon is now more, like, outside of its core ability to kill enemies, giving weapons utility outside of that makes them infinitely more likely to be used in any given scenario. Topspin, best weapon. Yeah, Topspin is another great example of, like, why would you design it this way? It's funny that you get, like, if you use Topspin, you get a fucking basically free kill on a boss. It's funny. It's not good. You shouldn't do that. Ooh, greater multiple projectiles and greater volley are now available. If only it didn't lose ammo on enemy invulnerability frames. There are so many things that you could do to Topspin to make it less garbage, but none of those things are in the game, so it is pretty garbage. One hit kill 10% of the time, most of the time it'll do fuck all. Yeah. When it comes to designing a game wherein you are expected to slowly gather and develop a variety of weapons, you gotta give players a reason to use the variety of weapons. You gotta give players a reason to not just, you know, okay, as someone that primarily used the sword and the buster above all else, as someone who did that myself, I was always most impressed by the games that got me to use the other weapons. That always left a drastically better impression on me. No elemental resistances, but 52 life and 25% move speed is real spicy. I keep checking the guild stash as if there's gonna be some hot new pieces of something in here. I don't think... I think I'm the only one playing right now. In our guild. Just gotta hit them in a way that you bounce out of their hitbox after frame 1. Yeah, easy peasy. But that's another thing. That's one thing that Metroid Dread did extremely well. And I think... Okay. The concept of a Mega Man Metroidvania that's a good idea. That's a good idea. But you don't want to mix the two too much. What you want to do with a Mega Man Metroidvania, you want it to be mostly Metroid free money. You want it to be mostly Metroidvania. You want a lot of Mega Man theming. That's what you want. Because the Mega Man theming works exceptionally well with a Metroidvania style of game. Because the whole point of the Mega Man games is that as you are progressing, you are developing a wider and wider set of tools, and those tools make everything afterwards that much easier. That's great! That's exactly what you want in a Metroidvania-style game. But when you're designing the game as a whole, you do one or the other. Because one of the things that makes Metroidvania games so appealing is that when you get new abilities, the new abilities aren't just ways to kill enemies differently. These new abilities have become utility options, like Guacamelee. So, one of the first abilities, maybe even the first actual ability that you get in Guacamelee, is a fire uppercut. Obviously, this cool fire uppercut is a good way to kill enemies. Obviously. It's a big fire, it's a big uppercut. You know, you use it to launch enemies up into the sky, and then you can do air combos. Perfect. But it's not just a combat ability, and you don't just use it to break the red blocks. You do use it to break the red blocks, but it's not just one, it's not just the other. And it's not just both. What makes the fire uppercut so cool is because it's now an extra jump. You use that fire uppercut in the air, and you have now gained a substantial amount of height. So it's like, I think you do get a double jump ability in Guacamelee at some point. I don't remember, it's been a while. But, you get a functional double jump almost right away in the form of this uppercut. So now you are using this uppercut all the time, all the way throughout the game, because it's not just useful in combat. It's not just useful to, break open things that are specifically there to be broken by the uppercut. It's also a versatile utility option. You shouldn't design the game as a whole, you should design it as a Metroidvania. Ugh! But I heart hole. Captioner. Heart. Huh. With an H. Here I was making a funny joke about Doro Hedoro. And the Captioner makes it filthy. But yeah, when you're designing new abilities to give your player, you want to give the player as many reasons to use it as possible. Sure, fine. You give a player a specific weapon that's good against specific types of enemies. Fine. But in the depending on what kind of game you're making, so many of these design decisions are so reliant on context. In a survival horror game, you don't want every new ability and weapon to have, 5 different uses. They're all, super versatile. One of the main appeals to in survival horror design is, in a way, it's player expression, right? It's what kind of gameplay do you prefer, and how are you going to make that kind of gameplay work with your limited resources? Maybe the TMP is totally viable to use in Resident Evil, but you would never catch me dead with any TMP ammo at all, let alone actually investing resources into putting the TMP. And so, just through the nature of me as a player not liking this gameplay option, I am expressing myself by not engaging with it. And I'm not being punished for it, per se. Because not investing resources into the TMP, not carrying TMP ammo around, is beneficial to me because that saves inventory space for other kinds of ammo, that saves money to be invested into other weapons that I personally enjoy more. Sure, there are situations that the TMP would be helpful. They do design some situations where specific kinds of weapons would be more useful. But it's not a be-all, end-all kind of situation. And that's kind of a similar situation to how a lot of Mega Man games end up being designed, is, do you have Fireman's weapon? If you don't have Fireman's weapon, then this level might be more difficult, because this level was designed such that it is easier if you have Fireman's weapon. And that's fine. Because then, alright, well, this level is really hard since I don't have Fireman's weapon. I'm gonna go get Fireman's weapon. You go and try and get Fireman's weapon. Ah, shit, this level's also really hard if I don't have Airman's weapon. I'm gonna go get Airman's weapon. Yeah, those are 2 different games, but whatever. Because then, your capability as a player is determining your progression through the game. And in a way, it's similar to the design of something like a Resident Evil. But that's not the kind of design that you want in a Metroidvania. One of the core principles of the Metroidvania design is gaining these new abilities, developing your set of abilities such that you have options in combat, but you also have all of these utility options that can be used in all kinds of ways throughout exploring the game world. Because that is the core of a Metroidvania's exploration. And that's something that Mega Man ZX and ZX Advent fucking sucked at. So many of those abilities were either one-off uses, they weren't fun to use outside of the context in which you are very specifically supposed to use them. And sometimes it would just be a key. Just hey, this door's frozen, you need to hit the frozen door with the fire attack. Okay, cool, the fire attack is now nothing more than a an attack for the rest of the game. That fucking sucks. I hate it. You compare that to something like Metroid Dread. Metroid Dread. All right. I just got the storm missiles. Cool. I'm now going to use the storm missiles to solve puzzles. I'm going to use the storm missiles to kill enemies. I'm going to use the storm missiles, like, not just kill enemies, but to, like, make my way through difficult scenarios. It's that one ability that you find changes the way that you can approach situations fundamentally. Hey, there's a really fast enemy in this room, so I'm going to start the targeting thing. I'm going to start targeting with the storm missiles, and I'm just going to waggle my aim around until I lock on to the really fast flying enemy or whatever. And then I just let go, and the game will help me deal with this threat. Because I'm using my tools. It's great! I should have used the storm missiles more often. Do you know there's enemies you can insta-kill with the grapple beam? I didn't know that, but that... I'm thinking about a couple of enemies that could be the case with, and that's great. That rules. Give me more of that. Metroid Dread is so good. The blob enemies that stick to the ceiling. Yep, that makes sense. Now I'm just mad about Metroid... not Metroid, I'm mad about Mega Man ZX again. Why did they make that game like that? Who hurt them to design such a game? Get mad at Mega Man 9 instead? I mean, I could. I'm mad at Mega Man 9 for different reasons than I'm mad at Mega Man ZX. Mega Man ZX fucked up, like, a genre that I hold near and dear to my heart. Mega Man 9 fucked up a franchise that I hold near and dear to my heart. Oh, Oriath. Oriath is the cool place that we got banned from, but we're back. And there's nothing they can do to stop us. Mega Man 9 is so much better than Mega Man ZX. I think I would rather play ZX again, but they're both very bad options. I would much rather not play either. Give me Mega Man 8. Give me Mega Man X6. Give me Mega Man X8. I'll take X8 over 9 or ZX any day of the week. Guaranteed. Maybe most of my dislike for Mega Man 9 is A lot of my dislike for Mega Man 9 is just... they took out so many good mechanics and left in some bad mechanics for no good reason. And the shop is not fundamentally a bad mechanic. It's not. I talk a lot of shit about the shop, but I don't think the shop is as bad as it may seem from how I talk about it. What I cannot abide by is the fact that they use the shop to make the game worse. They use the shop as an excuse for poor decision, for, like, poor design. You have a live system, alright? There are so few lives that you can find throughout the game, because what you're supposed to do is just use money to buy... Hey, do you need lives? Just use money to buy more lives. Oh, it's so versatile, you know, you could use money to do anything. Yeah, but then how do you differentiate what is a rewarding thing for me to earn in the context of a challenge? Why am I, like... if you're going to be giving me money all of the time, right? Enemies drop money, there's money you can find in any level, it's just everywhere through the nature of the game having a shop. You can find money everywhere. Why am I going to go through this difficult extra platforming section to get money? I can get money everywhere. As opposed to having clear, distinct rewards with tangible benefits depending on, like, risk-reward analysis. I can do this difficult platforming section. I think I'm good enough to do this difficult platforming section because at the other end of the difficult platforming section, there's an extra life. If I fuck up, I die. But if I don't, I am coming out of it up a life immediately. Right here, right now. You told me where to farm bolts and I refused. Fucking... Why do I have to farm? And the farming feels so much worse because I'm not getting that immediate feeling of a distinct reward. I'm putting my satisfaction on layaway. It sucks. Give me the life now. Ah! And it's again, for as much as I get frustrated by it, for as much as I can rant about it, it's still a relatively minor thing amongst all of the things that I dislike about Mega Man 9. I don't just hate Mega Man 9 because it kept in the live system. You know, if it were just the live system, then there would have been a lot more Mega Man games that I hated, because more of them have lives than not. Rather, more of them have lives that actually matter than not. Because even some of the games that did have lives just, you know, oh, like Mega Man X6. Mega Man X6 is just like, oh, you just start at the checkpoint. Whatever. Like, oh no, you ran out of lives. Oh well, just keep going. It's fine. It's that fucking meme. Oh no! Anyway. But there are just so many things that I dislike about Mega Man 9 that all stack up on top of each other. It adds up in a major way. Because even just playing the game, even just like very basic, very fundamental, just playing the game, you took away the slide. Why? More Mega Man games have the slide than not. Like, are you really just self-filleting yourselves over designing a new Mega Man 2 so much that you're not going to look at the core design of Mega Man and not realize that giving the players, like, a fundamental option other than jump and shoot is a good thing? You don't even need an extra button. Mega Man 3 had it. You push down and hit the slide button. I didn't even use the slide that much. Just the fact that they didn't have it is so infuriating. So I think I've I believe that I have established this before. I don't think Mega Man 9 is a bad game. Just like, I don't think it is a flat-out bad game. It takes a lot for me to say that a game is just bad, period, anyways. But here, I shit-talk that game a lot, because I hate that game. I, personally, fucking hate Mega Man 9. And I think it is one of the only video games that I hate. I've played a lot of video games, and I've played a lot of bad video games. I've played a lot of video games that I did not like at all. Mega Man 9 is one of the only video games that I hate. But you know, it happens. Ooh. I'm trying really hard to come up with... My mind is just so engrossed in the hatred. I'm having a hard time coming up with other games that I, like, actively disliked. I think Command & Conquer Red Alert 3 is a game that I am, like, one of the most disappointing games for me. Not because it wasn't good, but because it just wasn't what I was looking for. One of my favorite parts about playing RTS games is resource management and stuff like that. You know, playing Warcraft 3, trying to... It's interesting, like, oh, how many dudes do I have on my mines? How many dudes do I have out chopping down the forest? Or, like... like, really interesting stuff like, oh, instead of chopping down the forest, this other faction just, like, doesn't use this resource, or this other faction interacts with the resource in a different way. And stuff like that. That stuff is really cool. I like that stuff a lot. So, Command & Conquer Red Alert 3, it did not have a traditional resource management system, and as a result, it just didn't click with me at all. I don't think Red Alert, like, I don't really even actively dislike Red Alert 3. It's just like, it's not my jam. Whenever you think about Command & Conquer now, you think about 4 and how it killed the franchise. Yeah, well, it happens. Mega Man X8 killed the franchise. Well, X7 killed the franchise. X8 was the death knell. Which sucks, because I think if they followed through from X8 and made an X9, I think it had the potential to be way better. Because I thought the fundamentals of the X8 were actually pretty solid. It's just that all of the level design was horrible. But nowadays we have Mega Man 11, and hopefully they follow through on that in some kind of way, because Mega Man 11 is so good. I love 11 so much. Oh hey, speaking of dead franchises, Ape Escape music. I need to stream Ape Escape 2 at some point. Ape Escape 2 was great. I didn't dislike Ape Escape 3, but I don't think it was as good. X3 had a lot more gimmick levels and gameplay mechanics. I think Ape Escape did a really great job of making all of the different weapons, like all of the different gadgets, fun to use and useful in different situations. I guess I just really highly value versatility in player actions. I don't feel like that's an unreasonable thing. I don't think people would disagree with me. But I really enjoy when games give me a thing that does, you know, not every single tool or piece of equipment or attack or action or spell or whatever. Not all of them need to be fucking Swiss Army knives. Because sometimes you end up with situations like party-based games, like games where you have a party of characters, a variety of different characters that each have their own skill sets. Each of those characters kind of becomes their own tool for the player to use in a variety of ways. And so there are a couple of different ways that you can go about it, where you have a set specific array of characters that you have a 4-person party, but with that 4-person party, you can do all kinds of stuff with them. You can do, you can multi-class them, you can switch up their classes based off of what you need, which accomplishes a very similar thing to just switching them out for a different party member, but having each of those player characters have a wide variety of uses can feel really good. It's like, oh, this character is really good at magic, which means they're both a really good damage dealer, but magic, like, if the game uses the same stats between, black magic and white magic, then they can do really good damage, or they could be a really good healer. Cool. Fun movement options, yeah. Good. That's a way more fundamental kind of thing. Is like, does it feel good to control the character? Because if it doesn't feel good to control the character, no matter what kind of game you've made, no matter what kind of game it is, not feeling good to control the character is, like, that's, at the very, very basic level, that is a hurdle for the player to overcome. And unless the entire game is the hurdle, such as a getting over it, unless that's the whole point of the game, probably not the best idea to make it difficult for the player to interact with the game. You want to wave dash in your dating sims? I mean, if you're moving the character around in a 2D environment in your dating sim, maybe wave dashing could be cool. All right. Wave dashing in a dating sim. How's that gonna work? So you navigate the world kind of similar, like the general world design is kind of Night in the Woods like, where it's like a 2D open world where you're navigating a town from a 2D perspective, right? So then controlling the character becomes like, it becomes relevant to the way that the player interacts with the game. Because sometimes there's like hidden stuff that you can access if you do some platforming. Alright, so now we have established how the player interacts with the world. Like, in a very fundamental way. Now, how do you make wave dashing, like, alright, to implement wave dashing, you could just have a button that does a wave dash. Or maybe you have some kind of, like, directional extra jump, like a Celeste or something. I don't know what the thematic reason why the player character would have this directional extra jump. But, you know, the air dodge is kind of like a directional extra jump. So now you have the player have that for some reason. Maybe maybe there are, like, obstacles in the world that they have to navigate past and around. Like, there's platforming puzzles to get to certain areas to interact with certain NPCs. Hey, if you want to go date the wizard, then you need to use your cool directional extra jumps to get past the traps in the wizard's tower. There. Got there. Now, what if NPCs were to recognize or acknowledge or somehow, have some kind, your movement has some kind of interaction with NPCs. Alright? So now, you have a dateable character that's a gamer. You have a dateable character that's like, you know, they're really impressed by people who have incredibly technical capabilities. So now, you wave dash in front of that character and you get some relationship points. Because they're so impressed by your capability to wave dash. Sequence break into the third date. Now, you would have to find, you would have to really do some focus group testing. You'd really have to nail your audience on a game like this, because a lot of dating sims are, you know, demographically, a lot of dating sims are very popular with demographics who are typically not particularly interested in skill-intensive experiences. Or, technically demanding experiences. So, like, a Celeste or something. So, who is going to actually interact? Who's going to care about your wave dash dating sim? Because surely the entire experience can't be entirely devoted around wave dashing, assuming that it is beyond a very short experience. So what else do you got? Well, implementing some kind of difficult platforming experience, different challenges can get you extra bonus dating points. Assist mode? Yeah, sure. Assist modes are fine. Assist modes are great, actually. But that's certainly a way to rectify the difference between those two demographics. Have you seen the jumps you need to do to get the morph ball bombs before that boss? Oh, I sure have. It's crazy. Hades is a really good dating sim. I mean, you can certainly look at it that way, yeah. But what if you were to take a game like Hades and then kinda reverse the balance between the roguelite gameplay and the dating sim stuff? It would probably be pretty tough to find a balance there. But it is totally viable for players to engage with Hades more as a dating sim than as a challenging roguelite kind of situation. You got it? What you got? WarioWare dating sim? I feel like that kind of game has to exist, right? Fuck. I need better gear. My defenses are garbage. 1300 life in Act 5. Oops. Yeah, that game has to exist. Just like doing little mini games to impress your date. Or maybe it would just be a dating sim themed WarioWare game. That's an option. Because theming can be like super powerful as far as coming up with what your game is and who your game appeals to. Like Doki Doki Literature Club, that it is a dating sim themed horror visual novel kind of thing, and it's totally viable for it's totally viable to approach that design as a hang on. You could approach it more from the angle of the dating sim, you could approach it more from the angle of the visual novel, more from the angle of the horror stuff. All kinds of ways to go about it. XYXX Feel the Magic? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, right? I'm pretty sure XYXX was very hetero-themed, but I'm pretty sure that game was, a dating... my understanding was that it was a dating-themed little minigame-oriented kind of thing. I also didn't play it, and it's been a hot minute since that game came out. But yeah, it, like, I guess the main question in that whole discussion is, are you making a dating sim, or are you making a dating-themed game of another genre? Like, even my my wave dashing platformer thing, like, even that game design, even that design turned out to be a platformer. It was just dating themed, right? Ice Shot, Frost Blades, Ethereal Knives, Spark, Blight, Rolling Magma, Frostbolt, Freezing Pulse. I'll get the Ground Slam one, I guess. Oh god, there we go. Path of Exile is a weird Metroidvania. Oh, you. Why have I not had a hollowed flask equipped this whole time? I am a fool. Either of you any good? Nah. Not bad, but not great. Alright, Sanctified is level 50. What level am I? 46? Do I want to craft the hollowed?
What? I don't understand what's going on here.
Nah, I'm not gonna quality the hollowed, but I will throw a transmute. Augment? Reduce charges per use, that's pretty good. And then augment. Removes curse on use. Yeah, sure. Fine.
Give me a break, give me a break.
Withering Touch. What does this do? Inflict Withered on hit. 10% of physical damage is extra chaos damage. Just Tricorn here too.
I don't understand what's going on here.
Flask. Go over there. Oh, unidentified. Avoid being shocked during flask effect. I throw an augment on you. Gain charges when you're hit by an enemy. Sure. Shuffle these around.
Give me a break, give me a break.
But, yeah, it's... There's a lot to do with, game design. A lot of different aspects, a lot of different things to consider. Turns out making games is hard and complicated. Which is one of the things that makes, the Ludum Dare kinda game jam kinda stuff. It makes those so much more interesting, to take into consideration. You know, we're just gonna take this very simple game concept and we're going to make a game out of it. The game might only take you, you know, half an hour to an hour to beat, and it's gonna take us all weekend. But we did it. we got there. And you can get some really, really cool designs from Game Jam games. Now, sometimes you end up with a game where, after you have played it, your thought is kind of something along the lines of, I get it. I get it. I understand the gimmick. I enjoyed interacting with the gimmick. But sometimes the result is just like, I wouldn't want to play a whole game of that, but I'm glad that I played that 45-minute little chunk of game. Like, Deepest Sword, I think is the name of that game, where you have to stab the dragon. Whoa! It's unclear if you would really want a game that is any longer than that, based off of that concept. But you can still take inspiration from that concept to make something interesting out of, because, I mean, I would be surprised if the initial inspiration behind that game was not Getting Over It, where you have this entire, you have a full game. I'm kind of tempted to quote-unquote that, but you have a full game based entirely off of navigating an environment with a difficult system of movement. And a lot of the challenges are based off of, there's no easy way to move your hammer such that you can progress from where you are. So, do you, risk taking a big fall in order to try and get yourself into a better situation, a better position? And those awkward moments of Getting Over It was basically the entirety of the game in Deepest Sword. The whole point of Deepest, the core gameplay of Deepest Sword was just trying to navigate these confined spaces with an increasingly large object. You know, kind of like the video game equivalent of trying to fit a couch through a doorway or around a corner. The whole point of Deepest Sword was to not get your sword size shamed by a dragon. I mean, that was the thematics behind it. I'm talking game design, mechanics. What was that game? Moving Out? That game is really fun. I think it ended up, I think I may have enjoyed a more puzzle-ish kind of design for that game, where Moving Out was... I streamed it with Lawyer Dog, if you weren't around for it. That game was all about... there's a bunch of furniture in a building. You need to get all of the furniture out of the building. Usually you have to get it all onto a moving truck. That stuff was... that game was really fun, but... for the most part, the challenge was, getting all of the stuff onto the truck quickly. It was more of, an action challenge kind of game than, alright, how the fuck am I gonna get this couch out of this room? How did they get this couch into this room in the first place? And then you have to, make a decision of... Well, I could break the window and just toss the couch out of the window, but then I miss out on this one, like, bonus for completing the level without breaking up any of the windows. And there was definitely some of that. I think they could have leaned into that a little more. Still fun. I think it's still on Game Pass if you want to check it out yourself. Hat and couches go a long way. Oh yeah, me and couches. We go way back. A fun couch co-op game. Yeah, exactly. It's a couch-based couch co-op game. But I think sometimes there becomes this assumption of, like, does examining the games like that remove any of the fun? I try not to be super pessimistic, super critical of just design and media as a whole. So when you end up with movie reviewers who their whole thing is like, oh, fuck this movie fucking sucked. Not a fan of that. But then you also have reviewers who, like, you know, they have a lot of negative things to say. But just because you have negative observations, just because you have bad things to say, doesn't necessarily mean you didn't like it. And having that critical eye doesn't necessarily keep you from enjoying the experience in the moment. I think one way that I tend to kind of process that kind of thing in my head is a lot of the time when most of the time when I am going over, like, any kind of critique or any kind of in-depth observations about a game, typically I will do it after the fact. A lot of the time when I am actively playing a game, my mind is on the game itself. I'm focused on the game experience as I am experiencing it in the moment. But it's still valuable to be able to look at a game and see what's good and what's bad about it, both from a personal experience standpoint and from, like, more of an objective standpoint. I mean, you wouldn't use the words good and bad if you were trying to be more objective. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach, like, not necessarily critiquing, but examining any piece of media, really, while still experiencing it. Couch lore. I've told the story before. It's a little too long to tell on a whim, but I had a couch experience. It wasn't anything lewd, get your mind out of the gutter, but I have had a couch experience in my life, and it was something. Yeah, see, Porps does what's up. Yeah, anytime that I feel like, oh, I'm not good with people, I'm bad with people, people don't naturally like me, people don't naturally find me charismatic, I always just gotta think about the time that I got, basically, I don't remember if I left the change on the counter or not, but I basically got a free banana at a gas station. So pushy or picky about the weirdest things in high school. I feel like if you weren't weird in high school, you were just putting it off. Everybody's got a little something going on in their lives. Some kind of personal something or other. For example, I have reason to believe that I have cultivated a culture of bunch of fucking furries hanging around my stream. Don't know what to give you that impression. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how it happened. It's not necessarily a bad thing, though. But you know what they say, opposites attract, so of course I would attract a bunch of furries. Damn, I should have saved these jokes for after I had gotten some kind of VTuber avatar situation going. I wonder how well those kinds of things work if you have glasses, now that I think about it. Because I have glasses, and so I don't know how poorly that would interact with the eye tracking. And I don't know how excited I would be to start living my life with contacts. Hey, look, that's Diablo clone you only know of because of the stupid, crazy builds you can make in it. Diablo clone. I feel like that's such a reductionist way of putting it. It is an action RPG. Thank you. But, yeah, Path of Exile is... It's got some absurd mechanical complexity, for better and for worse. Monkey's Paw Wish. You get a super good and cute VTuber avatar, but you can't use it with glasses. You have to get contacts. I mean, I would, but I wouldn't be happy about it. You see, I got Giorgio Armani's on my face. I got Armani frames. My dad knows them. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have made a JonTron joke when he's currently fucking trending for being an anti-vaxxer dipshit. But he said funny things in the past. I'm cursed. Do you see what his subreddit says? John is being stupid on Twitter. I mean, that's one way of putting it. I feel like he's said worse. He's gotten in internet trouble for saying worse things. Clipping me in the future for when you throw things at the VTuber avatar and putting it on YouTube for 100,000 views. God, if only. Someday I'll get that. I'll get that going. There was someone who had I think Ish had a vague idea of somewhere to point me towards that maybe I could start getting some progress. Which is just like 8 different Vegetes. I mean, their name is Ish. Their existence is an approximation. Ish is cool. I like Ish. Increased damage? Hot diggity dog. I think part of it is that currently my resistances are extremely garbage. That's certainly not helping my poor survivability at the moment. Oh man, transform this shirt! Plus 42 dexterity requirement, reflects physical damage to melee attackers, and extremely disappointing mods. Oh, maybe this shirt will turn out cooler. But yeah, Path of Exile is really cool and fun. But it is also very complicated and mechanically complex. And you can do some dumb, like, even fundamentally, even without having to do some crazy builds, you can do some really fun stuff in this game. It's just that a lot of fun stuff without being optimized at all ends up dropping off pretty hard at the end game. Because much like most action RPGs, you get to the end game farming, build optimization stuff, and it starts cool. It gets tough. Alright, battle plate. Boots. Still want a damage reflector build. Killing you with a clapback. Great. I mean, you could, probably. You could do a build like Lawyer Dog, where the entire point of the build is just setting yourself on fire and making that other people's problems. Is Path of Exile one of those really fun games you end up recommending against, like, Space Station 13 Warframe I mean, I would recommend it against Diablo 2, is the thing. It depends on whether or not this kind of game would work for you, right? Do you like Diablo type games? Do you like action RPGs? If yes, do you like mechanical complexity? Do you like... Alright. I'm gonna show you something. If you haven't seen it before, it might be a little intimidating. Can you deal with this? You don't... It's not even like you have to know everything about this, but if seeing this, like, immediately causes you, like, physical pain, then it's not your kind of game. But you start learning more about it, and you start learning, like, oh, everyone shares this gigantic tree of passive abilities. And where you start on it, like, your class just determines where you start on this gigantic sphere grid. Right? There's a shitload of different skills and abilities that you can get and use and do cool things with. So, like, the skill that I'm using is Poisonous Concoction, where you, like, your damage is somewhat based off of your biggest health potion, and then you can't use a weapon with it because your weapon is your health potion. And you can do some pretty cool stuff with it. Neo 2's skill trees, all of the skill trees are different. I don't actually remember how the sphere grid works, per se. But also, you may look at this and think, like, damn, Hat, you must know all kinds of stuff about the passive tree. And I would tell you that right now I am currently looking at a build to figure out where I need to put the points from this most recent level up thing. Because playing with a build is extremely viable, and you should not feel ashamed for doing so. Chance to avoid ailments, that's pretty good. Chance to gain phasing. Oh, right. Chance to gain onslaught. Do I want that? Or do I want to go for the stuff up here first? What's that node? Recover life on kill is pretty spicy. Ooh, chance to suppress spell damage. As someone that's super maxed out characters in Disgaea 5, yeah. Like, if you can handle the mechanical complexity of Disgaea 5, you can handle this game, I would say. It's just... is the gameplay your jam? Because it's... you're running around and you're gathering loot, and you're trying to figure out if the numbers on the loot are good. Is this any good, actually, now that I think about it? Increased life, mana regen, chance to block, chance to suppress spell damage is pretty cool. Minus 16% to cold resistance. My resistances are garbage right now. Damn it. Maybe. I'll put this in my box as a maybe. I'm not gonna wear it right now. Reduce rarity of items found. That's not bad, actually. Yeah, sure. Do I want the last breadstick? Yes, I would like the last breadstick. I will be right back. I'm gonna go eat a breadstick. I'm back. I really was just eating a breadstick. Oh god, my chair. So. Alright. So, sitting down on my chair backwards, trying to be hip with the kids. So you want to know if you're interested in Path of Exile. Most of what I would say towards whether this game might be for you or not, there are a couple of things. You gotta know that the early game is slow. Like, you know, it's an action RPG. You start off, and you're mostly just hitting zombies with a big stick. The biggest stick that you can find. And as you progress... I'm sorry, can you feel the sunshine? But not while I'm talking. As you progress, the mechanical complexity ramps up and up and up. But is that complexity what you're looking for? Right? Do you enjoy, like, really getting in deep on the mechanics? But even if you don't particularly enjoy getting super deep on the mechanics, do you enjoy, like, just running around and killing mapfuls of dudes in search for wood splinters and Jolly Ranchers? It's really good about, like, just always giving you something to work towards. If you do decide to give this game a try, in any meaningful capacity, there are a couple of ways that you could go about it. You could just start playing and pick up stuff, like, use skills that you think seem cool. Or you could follow a guide. If you decide to follow a guide, there are tons of guides available on the Path of Exile official forums. But if you're going there to try and find a guide, you gotta keep an eye out for the term League Starter. League Starter builds are the builds that assume that you are starting out with nothing. And typically, those are the builds that you will find have more beginner-friendly information. So yeah, keep that in mind. Did my portal go away while I was eating that breadstick? Dang it. But yeah, like, when I first started playing this game, I was able to get pretty far into the game with, like, the most, like, nothing terrible builds. But some basic hot tips for new players. When it comes to figuring out if you want to actually use a piece of gear or not, usually you want your gear to give you either life or energy shield, depending on what kind of build you're playing, and you want elemental resistances. So you can press C and go to your character screen, and you can look at your defense tab, and you can see your resistances. See, fire resistance 50%, 75%, 75%. You want your fire, cold, and lightning resistances to be 75% basically always once you get to, like, Act 5-ish. So, like, right around now, I'm really starting to suffer from not having 75% fire resistance. 75% is the usual cap for your fire resistances. Or for your resistances. You need special effects to get resistances above 75%. But the game will generally assume that you have 75% in all of your resistances after a certain point. And once you hit certain points in the story, it will reduce all of your resistances by a certain amount. It doesn't reduce the cap, it's just that you need more of those resistances to reach that cap. Also, when you're looking at skills, you gotta slot your gems into these sockets, kind of like a materia system. So you gotta pay attention to what tags the different skills have. So, like, the words right there at the top. So, Poisonous Concoction. It's an attack. It has the AoE tag, it has the Chaos tag, and it has the Projectile tag. So, when you're looking for support gems that make active gems better, you want to keep an eye out for things that are good, like, that play nice with Area of Effect. You want to make sure that the things will play nice with chaos damage and projectiles and so on and so forth. You know, it's an attack, so cast speed doesn't really do anything for it. You want attack speed for throwing these explosives at people. And as long as you're cognizant of that kind of stuff, it's mostly just like, you know, when you're looking for gear, life, resistances, and actually has the right colored gem slots for actually using your skills. And that's the basics. Using those simple techniques and methodologies and knowledge and information and so on and so forth, you too can play this game for almost 1,700 hours like I have. I think the only game on Steam that I have played for longer than Path of Exile is like idle games that I just leave open 24/7. Heard of, played gacha games that do similar things with reduce your capabilities for difficulty reasons. Yeah, it's not exactly reducing your capabilities. It's more like it's putting a tax on some of your stats such that the stats required to have like good, what makes the stats considered good becomes higher, because naturally as you progress, the numbers on the gear is going to get higher, and so on. Yeah, okay, I could see how that kind of thing would be present and how that would function in a gacha style game. Ooh, orbs. Oh yeah, also, for people that are considering checking out Path of Exile, get a loot filter. The system for how loot filters work has actually changed. It changed at one point, and now you can kind of like... what's the site? I think filterblade.xyz, or you can just search filterblade. And you can get some basic, generally versatile loot filters to make it so that, like, things that are more valuable will be highlighted. Things that are not particularly good will be either, like, low-lighted or differently colored or, like, fucking hidden entirely. So, like, these items, they're just common items, they don't have a lot of linked sockets. They don't have anything special about them, so they're just hidden entirely unless I press the highlight button. But stuff like the Regal Orb is both valuable and really useful, so it gets nice and shiny highlight. It's a big old beam of light and all that. Yeah, loot filters, super handy. Oh, also, typically I would recommend people play on the current running standard or softcore league. Because the cool thing about the leagues is that they give you, like, ready, consistent access to a new game mechanic that they've just introduced. And usually there are cool stuff, like cool interactions, cool things that you can do with that new mechanic. And also most players, I feel like most players in general play within the leagues. One of the downsides to playing within a league is that the economy is a lot more volatile. Like, if you get to the point where you're starting to, like, try and optimize your gear and all of that, then depending on what kind of build you're playing, it can be a lot harder to find the pieces of gear that you're looking for at reasonable prices, because maybe it's the case of, like, in the new league, you know, builds that care a lot about traps and things that give bonuses, like damage bonuses to trap skills. Maybe those are really good, so some of the items that are particularly good for trap builds are way more expensive. Because a lot more people are actively looking for them, while people will probably still be looking for them, and they will probably still be expensive, not in League, like the regular gameplay, where everything just sticks around forever. But you don't have access to the cool new mechanic. So. Oh no, he's turned into a big demon thingy. Sure hope he doesn't break my cool golden rod thing and make me bad. Oh no. You've been permanently weakened by Kataba's cruel affliction. You now have minus 30% to all resistances. Well darn. What a shame. So now I'm in much more desperate a need of better gear. But yeah, also just in general, when it comes to playing Path of Exile, it can be really helpful to play with friends or to you know, ask advice from seasoned players. Knowledge is power, as they say. Are all of the classes viable for endgame stuff? Yes. Classes don't matter nearly as much as your specific build. So it's like, theoretically, you can have an extremely powerful build with basically any class. But how effective that build is dependent upon the build itself more than your specific class. Of course, there are classes that are stronger than others, or at the very least, there are classes that synergize better with the currently, like, the meta builds, the more powerful builds. So, like, right now, trap builds are very strong. Any class or ascendancy, which is like a specialty that you pick at a certain point in the game. All of those, like, specialties, or the classes that synergize better with traps are generally considered to be the stronger classes because they are better at doing the current good thing. Oh wait, shit. Was I supposed to get that one or the one? No, yeah. We're good. So a lot of what will make, or like, a lot of what will determine what classes are good with certain builds, a lot of it comes from the ascendancies, like the specialty stuff. Uh, but, like, certain areas of the tree will just have more access to certain benefits that certain builds will want. So, like, chaos damage, damage over time, damage over time multiplier for poison, damage over time multiplier for poison, chance to poison on hit. I'm playing a poison build, so the fact that there's all of these benefits to poison here in this part of the tree does make me more likely to want to start close to this area of the tree so that I can, like, start picking up these points earlier. But, you know, maybe the specialty for this class isn't as good, and this class ends up having a better poison specialty thingy. So I'll start there, and I'll just end up down here a little bit later. And maybe just ending up at those points a little bit later is the better way to go. Maybe the ascendancies on one class are just way better for a certain kind of build. But if you know what you're doing, you don't have to listen to the meta one bit. You can do whatever the fuck you want, because there are so many ways that you can, like, utilize weird interactions with different mechanics. There are so many ways that you can just make something work despite the game's best attempts. That's typically what Lawyer Dog does. Lawyer Dog usually actively avoids any meta builds and just ventures on his own and does some dumb bullshit. But because he knows how a lot of the mechanics work, he makes it work. Is this a creative evening or a meta night? Oh ho 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 ho! You mentioned earlier there's different builds based on whether you're playing for story or for harder content. Is there much of a difference between them, or is it just you need to go ham for the higher end stuff? So there's a couple of different metrics that you could measure that aspect by, right? Typically, strong builds, like, really strong builds will be strong all the way through the game. Some builds are not particularly good until they get access to a certain skill, or maybe like, they're not able to sustainably use a certain skill until they've reached a certain level of power. Either that be, like, specific pieces of gear, or a certain number of passive points spread across the tree in a certain way, or whatever. Some builds are just late bloomers, right? Some builds are really great early on, but then you get towards the end game, and because of the tendency for action RPGs to have a huge focus on survivability, you know, maybe this fun build that, like, obliterates everything in the area right away, maybe you just end up dying in one hit to basically everything in the end game. So it's like, oh, you beat the game, you beat the story. But then once you start getting into the end game stuff, and the game starts expecting a higher level of optimization, then it's a lot harder to make the build work, or maybe just the build doesn't work in general. Like, there are some... I don't remember if Cast on Death is still a skill. Like, I don't know if that's still a gem that exists in the game, but it used to be. And you could do some really dumb bullshit with that. But it doesn't really work in the context of the end game, or it doesn't, like... You start losing experience on death as you start getting closer and closer to the end of the game. or the end game, rather. So in addition to actually losing progress when you kamikaze the enemy, the end game is entirely based on maps, which are just randomly generated areas, based off of certain tile sets with certain bosses and stuff. Like, they're procedurally generated, I should say. When you open a map, you get 6 portals into that map. Once you run out of portals, you cannot go into that map anymore. It's gone. It's over. So then, you know, if you have to die more than 6 times to beat the map, you're not gonna beat the map. You always wanted to do a multiplayer focus build that drops a megaton nuke when you die. I mean, you could. It wouldn't be very nice to your teammates if you were doing maps, because then when you die, that's one less portal for all of you. Hope the ability to respec is a thing if builds are so important. So, if you have a general idea of what you're doing, you can beat the game. Like, you can beat the story. Like, just as a whole, you don't need a super optimized build to beat the story. But if you're going to engage in the end game, you do want at least some level of competency in your build. So builds do end up being important. As for respecking, however, respecking is a bit of a weird beast when it comes to Path of Exile, because not only do you end up in the end game investing like so much value in your gear, and your gear, like, certain skills have a lot of overlap between between the stats that you want. So like a build like Flicker Strike, where the ability is you teleport behind someone, say Nothing Personnel Kid, and you hit them. And then if you have any frenzy charges, which can be generated in a variety of ways, you spend one of those frenzy charges, reset the cooldown on Flicker Strike, and use it again immediately. So that build is super good for clearing out just random dudes. You can just teleport all over the place until everyone is dead. Once the build is up and going, like, you're able to sustain yourself doing this. Super good at killing random dudes. However, when you get to fight bosses end up, like, once you start getting deeper and deeper into the end game, the bosses get way more difficult. So this Flicker Strike build will have another ability to use fighting the bosses that is better at fighting the bosses. Some of the problems with this are the way that the socket system works. It can be difficult or impossible to just switch out, like, oh, I'm just going to switch out my attack gem for a different attack, and then, you know, everything works. Not necessarily, because maybe some of the support gems don't work for, like, work for one skill but don't work for another. Maybe some of the support gems that you would need to switch to for this other build, or for this other attack, are have different colors. So that means you would need an entirely different piece of gear available to switch to when you're using that other skill. So versatility comes with a cost when it comes to this kind of game, or when it comes to Path of Exile, at least. And it's something that you need to be cognizant of if you're really concerned with, like, whether or not you're going to really gonna stick with a skill. When you're progressing through the game, like, all the way up until you beat the story, it is way less of a problem in general, because as you're progressing through the story, you're generally going to be switching out your gear pretty regularly. You're going to be finding better gear more consistently. Because, like, until you get to the end game, you're generally not going to have super specialized pieces of gear, or you're, like, maybe you found some super specialized pieces of gear, but you haven't really invested anything into them. So, you know, hey, this will be really great if I do stick with this skill, but maybe I'll want to try another skill, in which case you can keep it around. Or like, hey, maybe this piece of gear, this really rare piece of gear dropped, and I can make a build entirely around just this one piece of gear. You can respec, like in terms of your passive tree. You can respec your tree, but it comes at a cost. Over the course of the story, I think you end up with upwards of 20 refund points. But by the time you get to the end of the story, you're probably going to have like 80 points invested into your tree. So you can change some stuff around. Like, oh, I'm still going to be focused on dealing chaos damage, but maybe I'm not dealing chaos damage with poison specifically. Maybe there's another source of chaos damage that I care about. So I still care about wasting, which is chaos damage over time, but I can get rid of the points that I put into the poison damage over time and stuff like that. But if you're going to change what your build does fundamentally on like a grand scale, you just make a new character. Take it with a grain of salt when I say that it doesn't really take that long to get through the story. So, like, making a new character is not a drastic time loss. Especially considering that, you know, any gear that you still have lying around from the character that you had before, you could just leave that all in your personal stash and just have access to some stuff for making your way through the game again. But again, like, if you're going to like completely change everything about your character, you just make a new character. You don't respec your character. Like here, character selection. When I first started playing on this league, I was playing as a different character, and I was following a build. What I didn't realize about the build, however, is that once this build gets to the end game, it's really cool and something that I really want to do. And it's great. But until I get to the end game with that build, I would end up using a skill, like the best option for a skill to use all the way up until that end game, like that end game point where I would switch to the skill that I want to use. I would be using a skill that I don't like. So I was just like, fuck it. And I made a new character. And utilizing some of the stuff that I had lying around from that old character, I was able to catch back up pretty quickly. Like, I've been playing for I've been playing this league for about 2 days. And I'm already halfway through the story. And I haven't, like, 2 days, like, not all day, 2 days, just on and off for 2 days. So, I have characters with 2 days worth of hours played, just because I did so much grinding at the end game, getting all sorts of cool stuff and loot and so on and so forth. So, But yeah, in terms of like your build and what kind of build you're going to be playing and what kind of build, like, oh, I don't know what passives to look for. Oh, what kind of skill are you using? Oh, I'm using Arc, which is a really powerful lightning spell. Oh, well, I'll just search for lightning. Oh man, look at all these cool things that give benefits based off of lightning damage. Increased lightning damage, increased effective lightning ailments. Lightning ailments are shocked and sapped. That's cool. Damage penetrates lightning resistance. Alright, cool. So, I'm probably going to want a lot of these nodes, and the witch starts up here, so I'm probably going to want to be a witch, so I have easy access to all these cool lightning nodes. What am I going to do for defenses? Well, up here there's a lot of stuff that gives me benefits to energy shield, so I'll just search energy shield. Oh man, look at all these cool nodes that I could take to increase my energy shield stuff. Spell damage leached as energy shield. Great. So, you don't need to look up a build, you don't need to be hyper optimized in order to like get to the end game. But once you get to the end game and you're like really starting to do much more difficult content, then you really have to start considering, like, alright, how much better can I make this build? Would it be way better if I were to just do something else entirely? And you can do full respecs. You can just, like, get rid of everything off of your tree if you have enough points. And there are ways to get passive respec points that aren't quest rewards. You can find Orbs of Regret, or you could trade for them. You right-click it, you use it, and it gives you a passive skill refund point. You can find these just lying around. You can trade other players for them. Again, even if you've already beaten the game and you've gotten to end game, it's like, if you've gotten to end game, then you could probably afford some pieces of gear that make leveling, like the whole leveling process, way easier. There is a piece of body armor called Tabula Rasa. Here it is. This piece of gear usually ends up costing a decent bit pretty early on. Not because it's super duper rare, but because what Tabula Rasa is it's a unique chest piece of armor that has no defenses and no special attributes. Like, it doesn't give you life, it doesn't give you mana, it doesn't give you lightning resistance, it doesn't give anything. Except it has 6 linked sockets, and all of them are white. And white sockets, you can put any color of gem into them. So Tabula Rasa is extremely good for, like, early game leveling up kind of stuff, because right away you can use your main skill and 5 support gems, and thus your main skill ends up really strong, and you're just obliterating everything throughout the early game and most of the mid game. There's also some other really handy, like, leveling uniques, like Gold Rim. Here it is, Gold Rim. It increases the rarity of items that you find, and I think it might give you a little bit of life, but most importantly, it gives you a bunch of all 3 elemental resistances. So it's really great, because then you don't have to worry about like, really going out of your way to find a bunch of resistances early on, because you have a piece of armor that's giving you a ton of them all by itself. So then, even if you do end up having to restart all the way over from scratch, you're not really starting all the way over from scratch. You have ways of making the process of getting back up to the top much easier. So, yeah, it's... I love this game. I love this game a lot, and I every couple of months, I'll reinstall it and I'll put in another fucking 100 hours. But I recognize that the mechanical complexity can be really intimidating. And a lot of that is mitigated in a lot of different ways, and it's just different for different people. This game is not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but you can do some really, really cool stuff with it, in it, rather. You know, hey, I'm gonna make a build that summons a bunch of zombies and then makes those zombies explode. And then that's my main source of damage, is I just summon exploding zombies, and the exploding zombies just annihilate everything. Yeah, you can do that. It's great. But as for the stream, I spent a lot of the stream just talking about playing the game rather than talking about what I was doing in the game, but hey, it happens. I think I'm gonna wrap things up here, because it's getting close to midnight. I've been going for 3 hours and 20 minutes, and I started an hour late, so that's about right. As for upcoming streams, Thursday or Saturday, I intend to stream more of The Good Life. And other than that, I guess I still have Travis Strikes Again on the back burner. I still have No More Heroes 3 after that. Travis Strikes Again, probably not going to happen while I have another reading intensive game ongoing, like The Good Life. So I don't know when we're going to get around to that. If the Riftbreaker gets an update that fixes mods on the Windows Store version, maybe I'll hop back onto that for a bit. And also, sometime between now and the release of Elden Ring, I'm going to stream Sekiro. That's probably not going to be later on this week, but it could be. So if you want to know what's up, you can join the Discord, follow me on Twitter, etc., etc. You appreciate the explanation? That's why I did it. I'm trying to be helpful. I'm here for you. Plural. Anyways, thank you all so much for showing up and hanging out and chatting and all that good stuff. And hopefully I'll see you again on Thursday for whatever that ends up being. Y'all have a good evening.